Hello, my name is Karolina Gurjazkaite and I'm an environmental advocate based in Lithuania. I also have an interdisciplinary background of social and environmental sciences. Today I want to tell you a story of the first dam removal project in Lithuania and also tell you how this project has supported my advocacy work. Before I start, I'd like to give you a brief background of what kind of country Lithuania is. For those of you who have attended the previous Dam Removal Europe seminars, you probably know that Lithuania has really good laws protecting its rivers. This means that over 15 years, no dams have been built legally on any of the major country's rivers. Another interesting fact about Lithuania is actually that authorities and politicians are quite in favor and supportive of dam removals. Final thing that I want to tell you is that Lithuania is a really flat country, which means that hydropower business is not very profitable. Many of the hydropower plants are running low in profits and some of them are even closing down. So you would think Lithuania is such a great country with such great laws and everyone wants to remove dams. What is the problem? Why no, we don't hear any stories about dams being removed in Lithuania? I started raising this question back in 2018 when I started working on dam removals. I have invited, together with the Ministry of Environment, the experts from Dam Removal Europe and Amber project to Lithuania to give presentations in our national seminars. We held also the discussions and we quickly found out in these discussions that although Lithuania was motivated and willing to remove the dams, it would often land on very difficult targets, namely large dams or dams that have, let's say, some economical value, and therefore we would never have any good results. Also, a lot of effort have been put in building fish baths, and naturally no dams as a consequence being removed at all. Throughout these workshops, we have concluded that what we need to do is to start with the low-hanging fruit, with the dams that are easy to be removed, so they're old, already breached, perhaps have no economic value, and would also benefit, at the same time, the removal would benefit the environment. We decided to set up a pilot project on a Bražuolė river. We chose a barrier that has been very old and abandoned. We checked that it did not have an owner. This river was really special because it was in a Natura 2000 area and also was known as a spawning habitat for salmon and sea trout. Also, what was really important for us, that the local authorities, including municipality and the environmental managing authorities, also most of the landowners were in favor of this removal and we had their support. The local environmental authorities managing the protected area were particularly supportive of this project. This was so because this barrier has been gathering a lot of fish underneath it during the migratory season, and this was very attracting poaching. So the poachers would come and we would lose big quantities of fish at once. Therefore, they were really keen of getting rid of this barrier as soon as possible. Once we agreed that we will remove the barrier on Bražuolė river, we needed to get some funds. And getting funds from governmental funding and from EU funding was quite difficult and complicated, with complicated procedures. And it would take quite a long of time and there would be no guarantee that we would actually get funded. So we decided to fundraise. And here the fantastic campaign came into place. The Dam Removal Europe set up a bicycle team campaign and they fundraised within less than a year 15,000 euros that we used to remove this barrier.
We're celebrating the dam removal.
Good luck.
Good luck with dam removal.
Good luck! And have a good party and just blow up the whole shit over there. Yes? I say bye-bye!
Once the funds were raised in July 2020, this historic moment has happened. The Bražuolė dam was removed. It took us just 2 days, 1 day to break the dam and the next day to clean the whole area up. I'd like to put the Bražuolė project in a perspective of a SWOT analysis and discuss its strengths and weaknesses of the project. So to start with the strengths. The first strength of removing the Bražuolė dam and generally removing this easy to remove, low-hanging fruit barriers is that these removals, if well planned, can be very easy, quick and cheap. The second strength is actually that a lot of politicians are really supportive towards these removals because they feel as they do something good for the environment and they don't need to deal with a lot of opposition from other stakeholders. The third strength of such projects is actually it creates win-win situations. By removing these old barriers, we actually remove the old pieces of infrastructure that are dangerous to public. Also, we can save up on finances that are needed to be invested into renovation or refurbishment of these old infrastructures. However, I have to note that this removal of these barriers have weaknesses. And although this seems that there shouldn't be any opposition of these old barriers, still in the case of Bražuolė removal, some local people from the local community were quite upset about the removal, regardless the fact that it was benefiting environment or the structure was unsafe. Another serious weakness of these low-hanging fruit barriers is that by removing them we do not really solve global problems. So if, for example, by removing a large hydropower dam we open up a lot of kilometers of migratory routes for migratory fish, in these situations we open up the spawning habitat perhaps of a few kilometers length, but overall it solves the problem only at a very local scale. And now I'd like to discuss how Bražuolė removal comes into the perspective of opportunities and challenges. To start with opportunities, the first opportunity that I've already mentioned before is that authorities and politicians are really supportive of dam removals. Second opportunity is that the barrier removal has entered the major strategic plans of the country, and these are not only limited to river basin management plans, but many other plans that are planning the national progress. This is very, very important because this means that there's someone responsible for barrier removals and there's also finances attached that guarantees that the barriers will actually be removed. The third and very, very important feature is the EU and its role in shaping environmental policy in Lithuania and also many Eastern European countries. If there is no encouragement from the EU to deal with these obsolete barriers, there is a high chance that there's no action will be taken voluntarily to deal with them. Therefore, the target of opening up 25,000 kilometers of the free-flowing rivers noted down in the biodiversity strategy is really, really important into bringing the success and removing barriers in the national levels in the member states. The fourth opportunity comes from the scientists. This year there is an ongoing scientific research that will quantify the barriers in a priority list. So in short terms we'll have a list of perhaps 10, 20, maybe 30 barriers that we have to remove within the next few years in the list of priority. The final opportunity comes from the scientific monitoring. We have set up a monitoring program of the 5 years after the removal on the site of Bražuolė River. If the monitoring results will show that the ecological status of the river has been improving after the barrier removal, this would support many more of other removals and encourage them. To conclude on opportunities, I'd like to point out that the change is happening, but it's happening gradually, slowly, and step by step. So perhaps in the next few years we will not see this massive phenomena of a lot of dams being torn down, but I'm really hopeful, and from what I see right now, I believe that within the next few years small steps will be done towards removing more dams, and afterwards more and more dams will be removed. So the change will happen, but in small baby steps. Now I'd like to discuss the challenges, and this is very important. To be successful with the barrier removals, certain challenges will have to be met concerning competences and stakeholders. To start with stakeholders, I can clearly see one phenomena, that the idea of dam removal is restricted to a very narrow social circle, restricted to the environmentally minded people, which means to environmental authorities, environmentally minded politicians, environmental NGOs, environment-loving people, anglers, etc. People that are outside this environmental sector are not aware of this idea and not supportive of it naturally. Therefore, if we want to really make a difference, we need to start talking to different people from the different sectors. The second challenge that we have to address is to involve these different people, the different stakeholders, into decision-making processes. Bražuolė Dam was really old, abandoned and obsolete, and there was no hydropowers, and it was not a part of cultural heritage. However, I am aware that many other old dams do belong to cultural heritage, and we need to start discussing with the stakeholders how can we combine interest and find the common ground. The third challenge that we have to address is related to involving the general public. Regardless the fact that the authorities or the politicians are supportive, this doesn't mean so with the general public. And a lot of people are not aware of the dam impacts. We must ensure that clear information that is understandable and easily perceivable and consumed is available to people, so they know the impacts of the barriers. They're educated about the impacts of barriers, so they could support the barrier removals. Also, we need to involve civil society organizations better in the decision-making process. The final challenge that I want to address is related to competences. Currently, it is planned that the municipalities will take responsibility for removals of the barriers. This means that municipalities will be responsible for the project management and implementation and execution, etc. However, I think this may be problematic because often the municipalities and their authorities have other priorities. They may not be so much aware of the impacts of barriers and basically prioritize other work they have to do. What I suggest considering is setting up a national competence center which would be responsible, at least in the short term, for all the barrier removals happening within the country. So to conclude on the challenges, I want to say that the change that has to occur is not related to the dam removal. This change has to change in how we generally manage the environmental sector within the country. Now, to finish up, I'd like to share with you some news. This year in summer, 2 barrier removals are scheduled ahead. One of them is a small barrier on the river Anykšta, and another of them is actually quite large and spectacular barrier in the northwestern part of Lithuania, in the town called Salantai. If this project is successful, it would really make the difference in the life of the migratory fish and will bring outstanding results. However, I can already see that this particular barrier has already been facing these challenges that I have been discussing before. However, I'm really hopeful that this project will be successful and we could learn from what's happening, and these lessons learned could be implemented in the removal of the other barriers. Thank you for listening. If you want to contact me, here is my email provided below. Feel free writing me. Bye bye!